Waller, Zoning Board of Appeals Chairman. As a preliminary matter, we'll start by confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Biswas?
Yes.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Koshavos?
Yes.
Mr. Berger?
Bob, you're muted.
Mr. Berger, yes.
Thank you. And we will just confirm with the participants as we go. So good evening. It is 7:05 p.m. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with Legislative Acts of 2021, Chapter 20, Section 20, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is convening by a Zoom video conference as posted on the meeting agenda, which can be found on the Town of Grafton website. Please see the meeting agenda for details on how to participate remotely. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All participation within this meeting will be visible to others. Accordingly, please be aware that people may be able to see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording of this meeting, and the recording may be published or rebroadcast at a later date. This meeting will feature public comment. To request acknowledgement to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The meeting administrator will enable you to speak when it's your turn. For those on the phone exclusively, the AV staff will coordinate with the meeting administrator to allow you to speak. And finally, each vote taken during this meeting will be done by a roll call vote. All right. So let's see. So I think the first item on the agenda, we'll jump down to the last of the old business for modification of the special permit for 1012 Bridge Street. And I'm recusing myself from that, as I did previously. And I will mute and turn off my video, and Bill McCusker is going to handle this case.
All right. So, yes, the order of business is a modification to the special permit that is allowing Grafton Grill to have a tent. At this time, I'd like Mr. Belfiore to go ahead and speak. I assume he's enabled to speak, and give us a quick rundown of what it is you want to do.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So yeah, again, I come before you guys in the request to do what we've done for the last 2 summers, and put up a tent, a 30 by 30 tent to the left side of the building of Grafton Grill. And like I said, it's exactly the same thing that we've done previous years, although I do believe that we have put in some safety measures that are better than we've had in the past, being Jersey barriers and such forth that, aren't required right now. But we've done it, and we definitely have the safety of our customers, in our hands. So we want to make sure that we take care of them. So we have done a little bit more to get this approval, hopefully, and move forward.
So last time, all we did, by last time I mean last year at approximately this time in the spring of 2021, what we did was we basically changed condition C3 of the permit to expire on December 1st of 2021. We could just do that again, except make it December 1st, 2022. However, there was a lot of discussion at the select board level and others about the safety measures. And Steve, I know you folks went out on your own and got those Jersey barriers. I wonder if we should just add a condition C5 that says, that the tent shall be separated from the active parking lot by way of Jersey barriers or something along those lines. And I assume that's your intention to do that. So I would assume you would have no objections to adding a condition C5 that says something like that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It seems straightforward to me. Any comments or questions from members of the board? Mr. Yeomans.
Yeah, I just have a question. Steve, did you say left side or right side of? It's back where it was last year.
Yeah, it's the same spot.
Okay.
When I'm coming out the door, it's my left, but if you're facing the building, it's your right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
All right.
Same,
Thank you.
same exact spot.
It's on the server's left. It's on the patron's right. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Adams.
In 21, was there limited seating inside because of COVID?
In 21, there was not limited seating inside because of COVID. In 20, it was. We were closed for part of the summer indoors, and then we opened back up. But my understanding and what I wrote to you guys in a letter or an email is that per the requirements when we got approval through the state under the state of emergency guidelines, that the approval was only based on your original capacity. So we will never go over our original capacity of what we currently are without the tent. And that's why we never really had any problems with parking, because we're not seating 65 people outside and 100 people inside. You just can't physically do that. We won't do it. And it wouldn't be a good situation for anybody, especially our patrons who are, expecting to get their food at a reasonable time. So there's the letter. This is basically describing the parking situation and the requirements. So the guidelines, if for those of you that don't know, for restaurants in Grafton, for every 3 seats that you have inside your building, you need 1 parking space. And for every employee that's of driving age, that's working and not dropped off by their parents, has to have 1 spot as well. So that's why you'll see there's different numbers in here based on parking spaces. And then I divided it obviously by 3 chairs, and you get your current, what your requirement is for your parking spaces. And then I also did it with the tent. And, based on how we have it set up, we are over 12 spots with the tent and more without. But that's why like I said, we've never had any violations, no traffic issues. No one ever, had any issues coming in and out of the parking lot. So we, again, at the bottom of the email, it says that we will not overseat our capacity per our building permit that we have currently.
And I'll just add that condition C2 of the permit states, at no time shall the provided seating capacity of associated indoor and outdoor seating facilities exceed the original capacity of the restaurant after subtracting 3 seats for each parking spot temporarily used to accommodate outdoor seating. So I think that covers it as well. Or maybe not. Capacity of the restaurant after subtracting 3 seats for each parking space temporarily used to accommodate outdoor seating. So if you're using 9 spots, you're supposed to subtract 27 seats. And where does it say in there what your capacity is?
My capacity for the building on my permit is 99.
And I think that's what you want to keep between inside and outside.
Yep. But the way the building permit's written, the outdoor patio that we have approval for, which is in the front of the building, those are additional seats that are approved, but they're not in the building and they're on the permit separately. So 99 is indoors. That's what our capacity is. So we'll never go over. So if it's a beautiful day, most people want to sit outside. There's roughly 65 seats outside in the tent. So we would obviously subtract those 65 seats from the inside. The bar obviously would be, if there's 12 stools at the bar, that we would fill. And then whatever's left, if there was someone to come in and we were at capacity, even though our tables are empty and they questioned it, it's per the guidelines of our permit. We cannot overseat the building. So we would not seat any more people inside. If we did, we'd have to not seat somebody outside.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Steve, but do you understand what I'm saying? And I don't know if you have in front of you. Actually, Katrina, can I share? Can we try and make that happen? Or can you share the permit?
I'd have to go up upstairs and get it. It's on the
No, not you, Steve. Katrina, the permit is on the website. That may be the easiest thing to do. Just have you share it. It's decision was filed with Registry of Deeds. Like third up from the bottom on the website. So Katrina, next page.
Yep.
There's condition C2, and it's the second part of that has me concerned right now because it's inconsistent with what you're saying. Capacity of the restaurant after subtracting 3 seats for each space. So if this language stays in there, your total capacity inside and out becomes 99 minus 27. Or 72. And I don't think that's your intention.
No, why? That wouldn't be fair because then I would be less my capacity overall if I didn't have the tent at all. Right.
And I think the intention here, Steve, is that if you're taking away parking spots, then you need to take away capacity. In theory, this language everyone else has the same language. You have a unique situation in so much as you have more parking than you need for 99, right?
Correct.
And I think that even with the tent in place, with the removal of those 9 spots, you still have enough parking for 99 seats, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I propose.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, so I propose that we change C2 to read, at no time shall the provided seating capacity of associated indoor and outdoor seating facilities exceed 99 seats.
I'm fine with that.
So what we're talking about here is 2 things. Change condition C2 to read, actually 3 things. Change condition C2 to read, change condition C2 to read, at no time shall the provided seating capacity associated indoor and outdoor seating facilities exceed 99 seats, period. Change C3 to expire on December 1st, 2022, and add a C5 that states there shall be barriers provided between the active parking lot and the outside seating area, at all times patrons are present or something like that. Essentially Jersey barriers, but some sort of barriers between the parking lot. Those are the 3 things I think we want to modify here. I think those are all minor modifications. That's the direction I'd like to go. Any other thoughts or comments from members of the board?
Bill, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
So I agree with you 100%, but I don't have it in front of me, but on the wall upstairs, I could go get it. My permit states that I do have an additional 18 seats on patio. So that's the patio that's in the front of the building that I got approved years ago. And we have a liquor license out there for that. So it's 99 plus the 18 that's outside. Like I've always had that. It's on my permit. So I would just hope, can you put it in like that? Because I don't want to lose those 18 in the front of the building.
Understood. Do you have the parking for,
Yes.
oh, this, even with the -9 spots?
Absolutely, I do. Yep, I put it in there, like in the letter, if you look at it, there's two different ways I did it. I did it with tent and without tent.
Okay, Katrina, could you put that letter back up? Because I don't know that I have that letter. Or I do, I've lost it.
So yeah, so there's.
No, Steve just sent it to me literally
sent it.
just before the meeting. So
Yeah.
nobody
Okay.
has it.
I did it just in case, and then I had a copy and I just sent it to her, just hoping that she would get it in time. But if you look at this, I'll quickly, do you want me to just go through it with how I did it?
Yeah, you better, because I'm not seeing it.
So
Yeah.
the first part of it, which is, so dear ZBA, there, the next section, so the bullet points is where the lots are. So I have a lease with Washington Mills. I've had it for 5 years. At the end of Bridge Street, there's a parking lot at the lights that I lease from them. And there's more than 20, but there's roughly 20. I know there's more, but I always say 20. So there's 20 spots there. And I have that year round without the tent. Then the lot over the bridge, which is on the other side, there's 3, I didn't put this in there, but there's 3 additional public parking spaces that go to the park. They're public, people use them to go to the park and vice versa. But inside there's 15 spaces there. Then on the left side, so when we're looking at the building, the Grafton Grill, the left side lot, there's 21 spaces over there. And that is after the addition that was put on last year. I took off 3 spots, so there's 21 there. On the right side of the building where the tent's going to be, there's 15 spaces now, 2 of them are handicapped. So when the tent is up, I lose 9. I don't lose the handicap spots, but so 6 total after the tent. In the back of the building, there's 3 spots. So that's how I got 74. Now, you see the first line says 74 parking space total. The next one says total number of spaces when tent is up. So I took the 9 out of the 74 and gave me 65. So there's
Yep.
my number. So now you start talking about employees. So the next one says total employees on shift. I used my most busiest night, which is Friday night. I have roughly 13 employees, but four of them are under the age of driving. So I don't count them because they get dropped off. So some of the employees get dropped off. So 13, I need that many spots. I use that number anyway without the drop-offs. I need 13 because you need 1 for every employee on shift. That's my busiest shift. The total employees, when the tent is up, I actually gain 3 more employees because I need 3 servers outside. So that goes to 16 with the tent. So there's the number right there. I need 16 spaces with the tent. Then you start getting into the chair count. So total chairs in my building right now without the tent is 97 seats. So I'm two under my capacity. On the patio, there's 16. So a total of 113 total seats at Grafton Grill without the tent. The next line is total parking spaces needed without the tent. So that's how I'm currently, it's 113 divided by 3 because you get 1 for every 3 seats. So I need 38 parking spaces to cover that, plus the 13 employees on shift, which means I need 51 spots. And I have 74 right now, so it covers me well above that. When I put the tent up, it goes up by 3, and I lose 9, so I go down to 54. I need 54 spaces because I go up when the tent's up, and I still have 65 with the tent total. That's how I got the number.
Got it.
And that includes the patio as well, which is what I was talking about outside.
Yep. Yeah, and I see where the patio is added in there. So I think then really what we want to do, everything I said before, with the exception of the capacity, is actually 99 plus the 16 on the patio for a total of 115. So it's just whatever condition that was, and it's not in front of me anymore, but it's the same thing I said before, just 115 instead of 99.
Okay. Yep. I agree.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay.
And then you see at
Any
the bottom,
comments from?
I wrote at the bottom, I just stated that I wouldn't go over capacity and, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It'll be in the, it's, yeah. All right, so we'll modify it.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Berger.
I agree with everything that you just said, but I think you really need to keep the patio capacity and the inside restaurant capacity separate in your decision, because just to protect Steve, his indoor can't go over 99, and this, years down the road could confuse things. I agree with everything you just said, but I really think in your condition, you should talk about the 16 in the patio and the 99 inside. Because when he goes and hits over 99 inside, he runs into trouble somewhere else. Just trying to keep it clean.
All right, hang on a second.
I agree with that.
Okay, Katrina, back to the decision, please. So C2 becomes, I think C2 becomes, at no time shall the provided seating capacity of associate indoor and outdoor tent seating facilities exceed 99
Okay.
seats. Right? So that leaves the patio out of it. If it's a rainy day, then you have you have up to 99 inside per your permit. If it's a bright sunny day, then you have people outside with the balance inside not to exceed 99 people. Make sense?
Yep. I agree. I
Yes.
agree with that.
I agree.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah. I don't know who that was that said that, but go ahead.
Should the write-up say the barrier as may be determined by the town? Because I believe they're in a discussion mode relative to the barriers. So rather than just saying, I know that Steve, it's great, the Jersey barrier, but should we say something that as may be determined by the town?
I thought a little bit about that, and two comments, and maybe Mr. Berger can correct me on this, but I think a lot of the discussion right now is with respect to in a modification to our zoning bylaw that would apply for next year. And Steve, I'm sure you're aware of this, but maybe you're not. I mean, the intention is that this is the last time we do a temporary permit like this, the intention is to have a permanent process in place that all restaurants will need to follow for the future. So I think that the discussion of barriers is for that amendment in the future.
Okay.
I kind of kept it a little vague. I suppose, Steve could turn around and put up a paper mache fence, but I know he's not going to. What I worry about is saying, subject to, town approval or something, if someone comes in and says he needs to have, a barrier like you might find out, between the lanes of the Mass Pike or something. So I don't know.
These are.
Well, I mean, I guess I was talking about the bigger barriers between the east and westbound lanes.
I know.
No, I agree. The Jersey barrier is the best barrier in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I have two of them, so I mean they weren't cheap, but they definitely, when I picked these, I picked the better of what they are, because I knew, if there was something to come down in the future, then I wanted to be ahead of that. So these can stop, a car at a certain speed and that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
there's
You
no,
picked the prettiest one.
yeah.
Other comments? And I can't see everyone right now, so speak up if anyone wants to say something. All right, so at this point then, this is not a public hearing, so I don't have to ask for any input from the public. At this point, I think we just entertain a motion to modify the permit as previously stated. changing conditions C2, C3, and adding a C5. And Katrina, I think you can capture all that from the tape to write that, correct? Ms. Biswas?
Is either Peter or myself going to be needed for vote?
Yes. I need to appoint someone. And seeing as you brought it up, I'll appoint Ms. Biswas to be a voting member on this.
Sounds good.
Thank you. So a motion from somebody, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded.
Marion?
I don't know who seconded it, to be honest.
I did.
Okay. Hearing none, any discussion? Then by a roll call vote, please. Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Ms. DeRogers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Biswas,
Yes.
and Chairman, I'm not the chairman anymore. Mr. McCusker votes yes. And that's it. Brian, come home, please. Steve, same deal as before. Katrina will type it up, and I think you file it or whatever we've done in the past.
Yeah.
We do
I'll
that
type it
again.
up and get you guys to sign it, and then I'll file it, and we're all good.
All right.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Have a good night,
Thanks,
Steve.
guys. All right, you too. Bye. Thanks.
All right. So at this point, let's move on to 45 Creeper Hill, case 880. All right, Mr. Morrison, can you just acknowledge that you can hear and we can hear you?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so we've had some exchanges with some additional information, and there's been some revisions to your plans. So my understanding is, based on feedback from Mr. Berger, that based on the height of the retaining wall, and I'm just looking at the large plan here, it's considered a structure. So my understanding is, based on that, it requires a building permit. And therefore, for a structure, I believe it would be a different variance that you need to seek.
It's my understanding that anything 4 foot or less retaining wall is not considered a structure. Am I wrong?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please, Bob.
The building code exempts retaining walls that are 4 feet and less, measured from the bottom of the footing. So looking at your plan, from grade to the top, it looks like it's 48, and then you add another 18 inches. So that would make this a structure, and that means it would have to meet its front and side setback. Of course, this says typical gravity wall section, and I don't know if this is the exact height or not. It may go higher, may go lower. I'm not sure, but based on the information I see, that's considered a structure.
But so if the wall's reduced by 18 inches, it's not considered a structure and I would not require a variance, correct?
Correct. I'm just stating what I'm looking at right now for your retaining wall cross-section.
I wish I knew this earlier. I would have had the plans modified to drop that wall 18 inches.
If the wall is being dropped down and you don't need the variance, then you go forward. But when you get and you start constructing and you give me a permit for that wall, and that wall is now exactly what we see here, then everything would stop. So if you think that you're going to be under the requirements to consider it in structure, then go forward. And then what I'm just saying to you right now is if that wall is considered a structure, then I won't give you a permit for that and you'll have to seek relief. But that is not part of, this meeting right here.
Okay. So if that's not part of the meeting, I think I'll have to acknowledge that. I'll have to go back and we may need to make some adjustments to that wall. Based upon that, can we move forward based upon the matter at hand? Or is that contingent upon making a revision to that? Because I think they're two separate matters. And I think as long as assuming that the variance is granted, I think the driveway would remain as is. It would just be a matter of a minor adjustments to that retaining wall.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Yeomans?
Yeah, I have a question on that. The typical gravity wall detail that's depicted on the screen, and I'm looking at it in your plan, that came about as a result of us asking for more detail and changing from the riprap presentation of the retaining wall that we first saw on the first plan. So I would want to ensure that any plan that just brings that down, that it's justified from an engineering point of view relative to this roadway. And the reason I say that is that I consider personally the first, I think it's about 100 feet, maybe it's less, of the front end of this is not just a driveway, it's a roadway. And that's why, we're looking at first it was a 1-to-1 and now it's a 2-to-1 with, with a wall down below. So I would just want to make sure that it's not just adjusting the drawing, but it would have to be supported by the engineering facts that necessitate the load that would be carried, and that wall, if it's less than 4 feet, that it, maybe it needs to be thicker than what you show. So that's a concern I have, and the concern I've had all along with this in asking for further information and a review by Jeff Walsh of Graves Engineering is that the concern is not a car going over it. I look at this roadway coming in off of Creeper Hill Road, that has to support any of our fire engines if, God forbid, there was a fire in the back of this lot in the house that's going to be constructed. And I would just want to make sure that front part, which again, I consider a roadway, and as it flattens off down below, then I consider it a driveway. But you have a roadway going into a driveway, and I just want to make sure that it would be re-engineered to satisfy any load requirements as would be dictated by a review of Jeff Walsh of Graves Engineering. That's it.
Would you like me to respond to that?
You can respond, sure.
Yeah, so that retaining wall, we had it redesigned because I understood the concern that the board had that with the 1-to-1 slopes and that riprap, we're moving to a 2-to-1 slope is a more conventional, typical slope so that you can vegetate it. And, you know, I think it more closely meets what the requirements are. So if the retaining wall needs to be reduced in height from below 4 feet, essentially what you just do is extend that 2-to-1 slope another 2 feet or 3 feet to get that the retaining wall to be lower. So it's just a matter of extending that slope and then shifting the retaining wall further over. And we're using the engineers currently got this designed where they're using a 2-to-1 slope, which is kind of a general slope practice, and there's no geotech requirement as when you start getting steeper and above 2-to-1 slope, getting closer to a 1-to-1 slope. So it's just a matter of just shifting that wall slightly, and I'm confident that it wouldn't be a problem.
So is the wall going to end up being 3 feet high and 1 foot buried? Something like that?
Exactly. That's what's required. I'll just reduce that.
So if it's in the same place, that'll make your slope steeper than a 2-to-1, in other words.
Yeah, it's just going to have to be shifted away from the driveway a couple feet to drop that, 2 or 3 feet to drop that 18 inches.
You mean go towards the wetlands flags more with the wall?
Correct.
Mr. McCusker?
So a question to something Bill Yeoman said. Bill spoke of fire trucks on this roadway and a road built sufficiently to carry them. Do we know, even with the 4-foot wall as presented right now, do we know that structure, that driveway structure, is sufficient to carry a fire truck or whatever it is we want it to be able to carry? Do we know that somehow?
I'd say two things. First of all, the fire department reviewed the original plans and had absolutely no comments. Subsequently, these plans were revised, and Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering reviewed them. He had absolutely no comments and said that if I can read his response was, in summary, I have no engineering issues with the driveway layout.
So it seems to me, to Mr. Yeoman's point, that as long as we get an engineering review of a final plan, a final design, that we should be okay. But I wonder if that's even necessary. And the next part of my question is, Mr. Berger, if somebody comes in and says they want to build a road like this, including a wall, do you do anything to verify that what's being built actually could support a fire truck or an oil truck or whatever may be going in there?
We would only look at the wall if the wall was not exempt from permits. A couple of years ago, the fire department did have regulations on driveways that were over a certain length from the street or the public access or the access to the dwelling. And if it was over a certain dimension, then it would have to comply under fire safety regulations. But I think that went away last year. So to answer your question, I don't think there's any requirements on that road for fire trucks.
All right.
So,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Berger, one other question for you. So, is the other variance or the current application for variance still needed?
Absolutely, because he's riding on, well, you can't see me pointing, but he needs 10 feet from the property line, except for the cutting, cutting in and out. And over by Creeper Hill Road, he's all right there. But then when he gets to a point coming up, go up a little bit, right about there. I don't know what that distance is between the property line and the edge of that driveway. And then he's coming back in. So it's very close on what he's really trying to do right there. Did you follow that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Yeomans.
again, Mr. Berger's comments regarding what the fire department, he thinks that that is no longer. I would want to ensure that the fire department has reviewed, and again, my thinking is that there's about, a 10-foot drop from the street. But that front section coming off of Creeper Hill Road, to me, is a roadway. It's not just a driveway. So the point that Mr. Berger just made about the fire department being concerned about some distance in a driveway, again, I'm looking at someone is going to build a road to come in to where they want to build a house in the back of this lot. So I would ask that be looked at very carefully, and that the weight of a fire engine and the personnel in it, that if, God forbid, there were a fire there, and it's not just one fire truck, there'll be multiple trucks that are coming in and roaring in on this roadway. So that's all that I would want to see in any revision of this plan, that it does carry it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the board?
Just on the height of the wall again, Jeff from Graves okayed basically a 4-foot wall. We don't have it anymore, I guess. So
that's
if we're at a three
like
foot
this plan.
wall, do we make the decision that it's okay, or 3 foot above grade is what I'm talking about?
Well, I don't think it matters what it is above grade. I think in total, right?
Well, it affects your slope.
Right. But, assuming, I guess, all the other adjustments are made to accommodate that, whatever the specifications are. Right. So I think the answer to your question, Mr. Adams, is yes.
We can condition the variance on, a review of the final design by Graves Engineering. Or, by our peer review consultant or whatever. I mean, so we could add a condition that says it has to be reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Katrina, is there any? Oh,
one last question. The driveway, it says 10-foot minimum. Are you planning 10 feet or 12 feet?
It's proposed 12-foot driveway, where it's talking about the 10-foot minimum is required to offsets for the water and sewer. So there'll be offsets. 10 feet is required for offsets to water and sewer.
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. I see that there. I missed.
Yeah, the other thing I want to make, I think it's worthwhile pointing out, is we've got proposed guardrails on either side of this proposed driveway. And the other last thing I'd like to just kind of briefly point out on is I'm seeking a variance to keep the driveway kind of higher in elevation. If I'm not afforded a variance, the driveway would be shifted much further southward And the grades there are much lower. So there'd be a much steeper slope if I'm not granted a variance. So there would be much more grading. And I think the issues with fire trucks would be much, the concern about fire trucks would be much different, I think.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one question?
Yes, Ms. Berger.
What is the slope of this driveway? It's just so small, I can't see it if it's marked here.
Yeah, we actually, if you go to the plan, we provided a detail. So there's a cross-section detail that shows the cross-section. I think it's on the upper section of the plan, right there. So there's
Here?
That's the erosion control detail. You slide to the left, right there. So that shows a profile. So it's about an 8.5% grade coming down that slope. But keep in mind too that if you're looking at the profile, the rise and run are exaggerated. So that you've got the plan view, you've got 10-foot sections going left and right. And then the grid's 5-foot sections going up and down. So it's a 8.5% grade. I think that's kind of typical. I think some roads approach that or exceed that. So it's not an unreasonable slope. And again, the town's peer review consultant, Jeff Walsh at Graves Engineer, reviewed it. He said he calculated the driveway off Creeper Hill Road to be approximately 8.5%. A vertical curve was provided at the bottom of the grade. So, you've had an engineer review this and he has no concerns.
Okay. I see 6 attendees. Is there anyone from the public that wants to speak?
Mouse. There we go.
Mr. Lane.
Yeah, if I may, a couple of questions. When I look at that driveway profile, I'm not exactly sure where the 0+00 point is. Is that the edge of the existing pavement or is that the property line?
Mr. Chair, the person should state their name and address for the record, please.
Sorry. Mr. Lane, can you please do that?
Oh, yeah, Henry Lane, 100 Main Street, Whitensville, Mass.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer that? Or?
Yes, please.
Yes, it's my understanding it was taken right at the edge of the roadway because it looks like it's at like 373, 374 or so.
So when you say the edge of the roadway, you're talking about the edge of the layout of the road or the actual edge of the pavement of Creeper Hill?
I believe the edge of the pavement.
But we're not sure.
I'm not the design engineer.
Okay, but it's your plan. So the reason I ask that is because if you look at the plan, obviously the section of the shoulder of the road between the edge of pavement and the property line is very steep. And I'm just trying to be sure that the profile starts at the edge of pavement so we have an accurate representation of what the grade is going to be in that section of the shoulder of the road between the edge of the current pavement and the property line.
Actually, if we can open up the site plan, I can show you there's the stations right at the edge of the pavement. It's shown on the plan. If you can
Is this
go to,
what,
if you can go to the plan view that shows the driveway from like the top view. So I think if you scroll down and to the left, I believe.
sorry, hold on.
Right there. Yeah, so if you look right where the middle of the driveway intersects with Creeper Hill Road, you'll see that that's station 0 plus 00.
I do see that. Unfortunately, my plan is so small that some of that is not legible. If I may, Mr. Chairman, as I'm sure the board is aware that we did submit a somewhat lengthy letter to the board outlining a number of concerns. I don't want to spend a lot of time reiterating each one of those concerns, but when I look at the plan, and I appreciate certainly that, you know, they've made some effort to improve the engineering by getting rid of the riprap wall and installing, you know, a retaining wall and a slope that theoretically can be vegetated. It's certainly a dramatic improvement. As I said, we appreciate that, but nevertheless, when you look at it, and unfortunately, I spent some time color coding my copy of the plan so I could get a better sense of what's really happening here. But when I color coded it, I see that the driveway from the edge of the current layout of Creeper Hill to a point about 100 feet into the site is at least partially entirely within the required buffer zone. So what you've essentially done is eviscerated the bylaw. I mean, this is, you know, you enter the site more than 10 feet from the common property line, but immediately upon entering the site, you encroach on the setback. You stay in that setback to some extent for a total of 100 feet. So essentially, you've eliminated the bylaw requirement for a vegetated buffer, which, you know, in theory should be 20 feet wide, 10 feet on each side of the property line. And, you know, you, as I mentioned earlier, you violated on both sides, and you essentially have 3 exits or 3 entries, if you want to call it that. But, you know, the bigger perspective is that you've essentially eviscerated the bylaw by allowing the driveway to encroach 100 feet for a distance of 100 feet within that 20-foot strip that's supposed to be a vegetated buffer. You know, if you're going to have bylaws, you know, you should at least enforce them. And, you know, I can understand that there might be a minor incursion here or there, but here you've just eliminated it. You've basically eliminated for 100 feet, you know, in a situation that's going to be an eyesore for the neighbor. You know, you've got, and I appreciate the fact that they were concerned about the safety issues that we raised last time, and now we've got guardrails on both sides of the driveway. Now, you know, I don't know where you live, where any member lives, but I suspect that you would probably prefer not to have guardrails on your property, presumably to prevent accident and injury, or people or pedestrians or whatever falling off the driveway into the ravine or down the slope. It's just, as I say, it's just a visual a problem, as well as remaining a safety issue. I mean, if you need guardrails, you've got slopes that obviously needed to be protected. And I understand that the applicant has, or the applicant's, or the current owner has easements to maintain the driveway, but you know, I don't anticipate anybody expected that they were going to end up with guardrails and you know, extraordinary engineering measures that were going to you know, create both a visual and safety hazard on their property in order to accommodate access. And as I pointed out in my written submission, this plan was created back in 1986. And clearly it was designed understanding that lot 5, which is the current lot, was not a buildable lot. And there was no attempt for 35 years to make it a buildable lot. Because, as I say, it was pretty obviously it was designed especially to be a non-buildable lot. If you look at the original the original A&R plan that was submitted for the overall 5 lots division, you can see that those lots were just twisted and turned in a way to try to create, that fifth lot. Reasonable development plan would have been just to take the 5 or 6 acres, divided into 4 usable, uniformly designed lots that you typically find, but that's not what they did. They twisted and turned this and just created these awkward shaped lots in order to try to create this fifth lot for reasons I don't understand. But now we're left, 35 years later, the situation where the owner, instead of doing a reasonable development and creating 4 uniform and attractive lots, has tried to sort of create this fifth lot in a way that doesn't comply with the bylaw that existed at the time. Now, I understand, I did have an opportunity to read the rebuttal that Mr. Morrison provided, and I just, he sort of makes the arguments, well, the bylaw wasn't enforced, but in fact, the bylaw was enforced, as I'm sure the board members know, that even though the Attorney General sometimes takes a lengthy period of time to approve bylaws are retroactive till the day they're adopted. So in fact, when the plan was approved, the current bylaw was in effect. And although there were some amendments later on, I think 4 or 5 years ago, the amendment did not change the 1986 requirement that you have a 10-foot buffer or a 10-foot vegetated buffer on either side of the property line. So that was in place when the original A&R plan was approved. So it violated it didn't violate. If you could put the driveway on the property, that was fine. But the idea that you had to put a driveway within the buffer zone was a violation when the lot was created, if that's what they intended. And apparently it was, because a few years later they created, well, I shouldn't say that. We don't know what they knew or didn't know. 2 years later, when they actually sold lot 4 and created the easement that they claim, and we don't acknowledge, they created a design that did in fact on its face violate the bylaw. So, they went in, they created the lot in violation of the existing bylaw. They created the right of way in violation of the existing bylaw. And now they're basically asking the board to say, hey, we'd like to steal a lot here. And yeah, we violated the bylaw when we created it. We violated the bylaw again, in essence, when we created the right of way. And now we're asking you to bail you out. And that's not the way it works. I mean, this is a hardship that they created when they designed the layout of the original 5 lots. It's not the kind of the hardship that we typically find when we're looking for variances based on hardships. This is a self-imposed one, and they're essentially, as I indicated earlier, essentially asking us to just basically ignore the requirement for a vegetated buffer that everybody else has to comply with in order to sort of give them, a lot that they're essentially not entitled to. And as I said last time, I don't deny anybody an opportunity to try to make $1. That's great. Obviously, these people have been sitting on this lot for 35 years and paying taxes, presumably, although I think was mentioned earlier, the taxes are minimal because the assessors, assessed the situation and determined, well, it wasn't a buildable lot. It was, created as a non-buildable lot. It's been a non-buildable lot for 35 years. And now that there's water and sewer there, well, maybe if we bend the rules a little, we can sneak a lot out here. But basically on behalf of, the neighbor, Miss Mason, it's a significant imposition on her. And basically, we're asking the board to say, no, this is not the kind of thing that was intended when the variance provisions were instituted. There are situations where hardships arise, but not hardships that you create yourself and then impose on your neighbor. So we're asking the board to deny this variance.
Mr. Lane, a question for you. So what is your contention regarding the validity of the easement?
Well, as I think I pointed out in the letter, the easement said that the easement or the reservation for the easement says that it reserves an easement along Creeper Hill Road. Now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I will tell you that the law is that plans don't create rights. lines on plans do not create rights. Only the written words create rights. So you can put anything you want on a plan, but that doesn't impose any rights. So the fact that the plan says driveway easement doesn't create the easement. The easement can only be created by the words in the written document, and the written document does not say that they reserve an easement over the driveway easement shown on the plan. It says an easement along Creeper Hill Road. Well, what's shown on the plan as a driveway easement is not along Creeper Hill Road. So our position is they didn't reserve the easement that's shown on the plan. They reserved an easement to allow to put whatever they wanted to along Creeper Hill Road, not into the lot. That's a perpendicular projection. It's not along. So, maybe it was poor choice of words, but in fact, they did not effectively reserve the easement over the driveway easement shown on the plan. So that's our position.
All right. Mr. McCusker?
Yeah.
I just want to talk a little bit about the required conditions for granting a variance. And I know that I wasn't part of the previous meeting, so maybe this was discussed, and I'm not a voting member, but I haven't recused myself. I don't have to recuse myself, so I can ask questions and participate in the conversation. And the applicant states, that he has a hardship that has something to do with the wetlands and things along those lines. Talks a lot about wetlands, but then, as we all know on this board, that hardship has to be something that's unique within the zoning district. And he goes on to say that with respect to the unique situation, he starts talking about the easement, which has nothing to do with the wetlands. So, I wonder if we should be, I wonder if we have we explored, has the board explored this idea of what the unique hardship, the unique condition owing to shape, topography, soil conditions is, and how that creates a hardship. And I'm not sure what exactly it is, and then whatever it is it unique within the zoning district? Has the board explored that? Has that been documented or written down that I'm just not aware of? And if it hasn't, I'm wondering what the intention is there with respect to, that first significant required finding. And that doesn't even get to the hardship part of it. I'm just wondering what those unique conditions, shape, topography, et cetera.
Yeah, so you're correct. We didn't get that far.
Okay.
In prior discussion on this. So, Mr. Morrison, what do you say regarding the unique topography?
Yeah, the topography is very unique in the instance where Creeper Hill Road was actually shifted, I believe, back in the 60s. It was shifted quite a ways closer to the slope, this piece of property. And you've got a very steep slope and existing guardrail that comes down off Creeper Hill Road. So I think by the construction, when they constructed Creeper Hill Road, they created, this very steep slope topography coming off the road, which makes it very difficult to gain access to the site. The other thing I think it's worth mentioning is that this easement was created back in the 80s, and the requirement of the variance, or the requirement for that 10-foot offset, excludes entrances and exits. So I would assume that the driveway would be considered an entrance and exit. Everything else beyond the driveway on this particular area within that 10-foot setback is vegetated. So I think that's an important thing. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, I understand, but I just wanted to point that out.
So can I just a question on, can you restate the point regarding the building of Creeper Hill Road and the date of that relative to the division of this lot or the establishment of this lot?
I don't know exactly when it was. I know that they reconstructed Creeper Hill Road at some point. I'm looking at these plans. It looks like a 1957 county layout or something. I think what ended up happening is when they built the bridge just down the road, they elevated the roadway, which created a slope that significant, it's a greater than 2-to-1 slope that slopes off the side of the road down onto this property. So you've got significant grades there. There's also some significant grades as you come up from kind of the wetlands heading. I think it's to the upper section as we're looking at this towards the driveway from the wetlands, which are in the bottom of this page. So it's quite steep, undulating topography through there. That's quite unique.
But isn't that consistent throughout that district?
I haven't seen any place else that's got slopes that look like this coming, from the edge of the roadway down onto a site that's within that zoning district. So I think that's quite unique.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McCusker?
to the applicant, why don't you just put the driveway like where the words vegetated slope are? Why don't you just have the driveway come off there?
I'm going to have to shift the driveway 20 feet to the south. So it's going to go right through the middle of those wetlands. And there's, the slope drops even further down there. So instead of dealing with about a 12-foot drop, it's going to be 15 feet plus by the time you reshape the driveway to get in.
But I think the real issue though is the wetlands.
And to be quite frank with you, under the Wetlands Protection Act, because there's a driveway easement, it's required that I explore this alternative.
Okay, to the board, in my opinion, I don't think this is a unique situation. This is New England. This isn't, Omaha, Nebraska, where everything's flat. The idea of wetlands and hills and steeps and slopes and ups and downs and all of that is common throughout New England. It's common throughout Grafton. It's common throughout the R20 or R40 or all of our zoning districts. So I'm not seeing the unique situation here. This is it's a tough lot, and there are tough lots in Grafton in all the zoning districts. And I don't believe it's the role of the ZBA to grant variances just because it's a tough lot to build on. Matter of fact, I think the law is pretty clear that it's not our job to do that. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeomans?
Yes, the point of when Creeper Hill Road, whether it was the 50s or the 60s or the grading and the bridge that was built, I believe that the person, the group that developed this parcel of land that left over this fifth lot also knew what they were buying back in the 80s. So I don't think the comment made about Creeper Hill was created the hardship. They knew what they were buying when they bought the land and created the houses where they built the existing houses. So I don't think that's a valid argument.
So I'm just looking at your application. I see Ecotech in the footer. What is Ecotech's relationship to this?
It's the company I work for. So I must have just responded to a letter, and it was, I cut and pasted from a template, and I think probably the second page still had that in there. But there's no affiliation between Ecotech and the property or this application whatsoever. The other thing too is, if I may.
Well, actually, one further
Sorry.
question though. So, and I don't know the implications of this, but I just see that on the plan, the wetlands are flagged by Ecotech, correct?
Correct.
And did you personally have any, have you worked on this lot personally?
The wetland delineation was flagged by Paul McManus, the owner of the company. And that was fully disclosed when we filed the application with the Conservation Commission.
Okay. I don't think it was disclosed to our board.
I didn't think it was relevant. Otherwise I would have, I thought it was kind of unrelated to the variance application. Otherwise I would have certainly disclosed that.
I mean, I think it's more just the appearance than anything else. I think it creates the notion that there could be, some preferential treatment based on that association.
I don't agree, but that's certainly why I disclosed that. Can I discuss briefly, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair? You asked for kind of a discussion with topography, but there's also, other elements. Soils is the other element to, requirements for variances. So the site, the portions of the wetland are flagged, or, the flagged portions of the wetlands and lower portions of the site is actually mapped as Freetown mucky soils, which are very difficult soils, as you might imagine, based upon the name, to work with. So that's, those are very unique to this particular site and unique to a lot of areas in Grafton. So, to avoid those areas, soils is one of the main characteristics of the ability to grant the variance. So,
But I mean, doesn't your statement though that if they're, I don't recall how you phrased it, but if their soils are commonly found in Grafton.
Soils are, but not Freetown muck soils. Soils are everywhere, but not this particular type of soil.
I thought you said this particular type of soil is found throughout Grafton.
No, Freetown muck is very limited of where it's kind of its reach. It's a very poorly drained soil. It's high in organics, so difficult to be able to construct a driveway on for sure. So that's a main driving reason why this driveway is located in the location that it is, as opposed to probably much more so than topography.
And how do we know that that soil is unique to this lot?
I could send you, I did a soils map for this particular property. I could certainly prepare and submit a USGS soils survey map depicting where the Freetown muck is located within the town of Grafton or within the area.
If I
Sorry.
may, Mr. Chairman, I'm certainly not a soil expert, but what would be different if there were more traditional or more typical sorts of soil in this location? How would that change the layout of the driveway?
I think if the layout of the driveway, I certainly, if I could have, if those soils weren't in place, to avoid the variance, I would have located the proposed driveway on the 45 Creeper Hill Road lot.
I guess I still don't quite understand that. If this was glacial till, wouldn't you still have to avoid the wetlands and put in the retaining wall? I'm just
Correct,
not,
but it's the Freetown soils aren't, it's a very poorly drained, it's not a glacial till material.
well, I understand that, but if it was glacial till, I don't see how that would change the location of the driveway. Because the wetlands aren't going to move.
Again, I think the soils create a hardship. Ultimately, putting the driveway where it is to avoid those soils.
So the test for whether something creates the hardship is exactly what Mr. Lane's asking. If that unique situation wasn't there, could you put the driveway there, or could you build the house there, or could you do whatever it is you're trying to do? So you've identified something that's unique to your lot, unique, special circumstances owing to shape, topography, soil conditions, unique within the zoning district that your lot has. Okay, you've identified that. Now, if you take that away, does that mean you could do what you wanted to do?
Yes.
And I think the answer remains no, because the wetlands are still there.
I disagree because, that's.
Explain it to us.
Wetlands, let me kind of rewind to wetlands permitting 101. You've got to explore all possible alternatives, and gaining a variance and utilizing the driveway easement is an alternative that you need to explore.
Okay, but we don't need to grant it just because you asked.
Correct. Well, correct in the fact that in the realm of wetlands permitting, it's required to evaluate that alternative. I think the soils in this particular case require to shift the driveway north to avoid those poor soils to access the site. So I truly believe that the hardship is the presence of the soils. Irregardless of the soils, if the soils weren't there, you could still permit a driveway maintaining the offsets.
So,
But the soils create the hardship of, the Freetown muck are difficult soils and create the hardship, forcing that driveway to be shifted to avoid those areas.
so where on, and I'm not sure if we can see it on that plan or not, but where on the lot is the Freetown muck located?
It kind of follows, let me see. I can't point to anything here, but it's,
Okay, Scott, I'll stop sharing and you can share your screen.
it's
And that
just,
way you-
I think the easiest way to do it is if we show you that plan, it's roughly this 360 elevation. What, 350, somewhere between 357 and 359, I believe that line is. Let me see if I can pull up the soils map for you.
The chair.
Mr. Yeoman.
Yeah, it seems as though that based on the number that he just stated, that this driveway has this roadway has some of those soils underpinning it, I believe. If he mentioned the 359.50.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, I see.
I have the good fortune to have a full-size map in my fingertips here.
It's always helpful. Yeah. Is there any way I can try and share my screen?
I'll stop sharing. So you should be able to stop. You should be able to go to the bottom of the screen and hit where it says share screen. And then click on it, whatever. There you go.
Everybody see that? Yeah, so if you look, there's the 53A. That's the mapped Freetown muck soil. So we're avoiding that.
You don't have that with the property line overlaid on it, do you?
No, unfortunately, I don't. But you know, for reference, if you look at this garage here, if we go back to the plan, let me see if I can switch back to the plan. Can everybody see this? So that garage is right here. So this is the abutter's garage within the driveway easement. So the other thing too is I've been kind of working to try and avoid that, to avoid the disruption to any neighbors to the extent practicable as well.
Can you go back to the 53A?
There. So the driveway would come in roughly like through here and then back to the proposed house back. Actually, I think it's back further back in here.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McCusker?
So the applicant provided, it's incumbent on the applicant to meet the criteria and to state those criteria, et cetera. And the applicant made statements in his initial application that are much different than what we're talking about right now. In considering the hour and the fact that we do have other hearings scheduled, it seems to me that the applicant should, if the applicant is going to now, instead of maintaining that the problem is the topography, but instead is the soil conditions, then the applicant really should go back to his original application and update it with that information, including drawings of where these unique soil conditions are, et cetera. And then this member has never heard of these specific conditions, and I don't know how we go about validating that. But we may want to think about how we validate that these really are unique within the zoning district. It seems hard to, I don't know how we validate that those really are unique within the zoning district. So that certainly, I think, is a question that the board should be asking. But at this point, rather than trying to engineer this on the fly here, so to speak, I think it's time for the applicant to go back and if his unique conditions, et cetera, are the soil conditions, then let's document that and provide the supporting data for that.
Agreed. So, Mr. Morrison, would you like to continue this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide that information. I apologize. I understand you're a volunteer board, and I didn't realize how long we were after this, but I'd like to, I'm here to answer any questions that the board has, and I can certainly work on the detailed responses. is there anything specific that the commission's looking for as I'm crafting those responses?
I mean, I think we would be looking for a resource on our end for a review of the soils if you intend to go down that path. But you know, you need a revised plan to address the 4-foot structure for a building permit or an application for a building permit for that. So I think, you know, at a minimum, those, but I think the board's concerns in general are the hardship and how, you know, well, I guess first, what's unique about this parcel, but then we get into the hardship, and that, you know, is just as difficult to overcome, I think. Mr. Yeomans?
Yes, and in thinking about moving this along, I agree with Mr. McCuskey's observations. And you know, there's other things that we always look at in granting a variance. Is it more detrimental to the neighborhood? My feeling is that it is. I don't like the fact, I mean, we've got a roadway that's coming in off of here, and it's got 100 foot on each side or something plus or minus 100 feet of guide rail. And now we're talking about, soils underneath. I think the applicant should have provided that if that was a question that was in his mind. So I personally don't, if it's the board's wish to postpone a vote on this and to try to come up with something that makes it unique, it's not unique. It's a wetland. It's a riverway, whatever that land is back there, and I think it's futile. But if that's what the board chooses to do, then I'll certainly go along with it.
Well, I mean, we can certainly vote on the variance.
Does the board feel that they have enough information based on the request? And we've had 2 meetings on this. We asked for additional information. He's provided that. And I don't know if the soil question is that unique. And I think there are other detrimental factors on this variance that I just brought up. While it's not a lot that's surrounded by all kinds of neighbors and everyone's house, it does have neighbors. And those neighbors have expressed concerns. And, I don't see a need to continue this further to try to find and discover a way to put this in. It's been before us. He's revised the plan. We see it. And if the soils are there, this is the plan we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't feel a need to continue this discussion, and I would prefer to vote on this.
Okay. Any other comments from the board on?
If it were continued, I would like to get another opinion from Jeff Walsh if the wall height is changed.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Rogers?
I'd like to piggyback on what Mr. Adams said. I think we were speaking about the height of the wall. Our first initial concern was the slope. So now we're gonna require the applicant to reduce the wall, which might increase the slope. So I think that needs to be addressed. And I think the soil issue does need a little bit of research. So I don't feel comfortable voting tonight on this variance.
Well, I think Mr. Yeoman's point is the applicant has 15 minutes to present their case. You know, we've extended this over 2 meetings, and has had an opportunity to submit additional materials. You know, I think we need to draw a line and, you know, vote on what we have in front of us.
And I agree somewhat, but I'm not, maybe I misunderstood. The wall, as it appears on the plans now, was sanctioned by Graves Engineering, correct? And then we brought up the fact that it might be too high because he's going to require another special permit or a variance for the height. So I don't think that's been adequately addressed.
So, and I have the minutes here, I probably have that, but because I know Mr. McCusker is not voting on this. He wasn't here.
I don't see much changing.
I'm just trying to see who the other voting member was on this.
I am.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McCusker.
I think the way that you would want to proceed is you would need to close the public hearing, and to do that requires a vote. If that succeeds, then the applicant won't be able to bring in any more information, and you know, we would enter into deliberations, and at some point we would have to entertain a motion to vote. So, you know, that may be one way to find out whether the board really wants to move on or give the applicant more time to come up with, you know, plan B or whatever. So that's kind of, you might want to just keep that in mind, that that's the way it should proceed.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And yeah, so I think that makes perfect sense. So does someone on the board want to make a motion that we close?
I'll make that motion. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. So we'll do a roll call vote on the motion to close the public hearing. Mr. Rogers?
I vote no.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to interrupt with a point of order. That's probably pretty important. Somebody should just double check and make sure there's nobody that wants to speak
Good point.
in the public before we close off the public input.
Yeah, thank you. So is there any further comment from the public? Mr. Lane, I see your hand is still raised in the Zoom, but is there anything else you would like to add? Thank you.
No, I'll lower it.
Thanks. Anyone else from the public? Okay. Hearing no, so we'll do a roll call vote on Mr. Yeoman's motion to close the public hearing on case number 880 for 45 Creeper Hill Road. Mr. Rogers, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. So that motion is passed. So at this time, I entertain a motion to grant a variance to the applicant for case number 880, 45 Creeper Hill Road, that would a variance just had it in front of me.
Case 880.
Yep. I have it. For relief from section 3.3.3.4 of the Grafton zoning bylaw requirement that a driveway be located 10 feet from the property line.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Mr. Rogers?
So we're voting to grant the variance? Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
No.
Mr. Adams?
No.
Chairman votes no. Motion is denied and the variance is not granted.
Can I ask one quick question before I think the way that motion was made and asked, I think the commission, the board voted for something that doesn't exist. It was stated that because the driveway is within 10 feet of a property line, you're denying it. Whereas you need to, I think it's got nothing to do with the driveway. It's got to do with the vegetated buffer.
Well, I read that from your application.
I've subsequently adjusted it and provided the detailed citation on multiple occasions. I think I'm ultimately going to get the same result, but I just, for the record, I just wanted to state that I don't think the board voted.
The motion should be to grant relief from section 3.3.3.4 to allow for a driveway to be located 10 feet from the property line. I think those words would be sufficient, and I think that's essentially what we just did we not?
That was, I read right from the public hearing notice, and that's what was voted on.
Yeah. I got to be honest, I wasn't paying attention to what you said because I didn't have to vote on it. But if that's basically what you said, I mean, that's what we do all the time. It's relief from some section of the bylaw, a variance to grant relief from some section of the bylaw to do something, to construct a driveway 10 feet from the property line in this case. So I think that's sufficient, Brian. If that's what you did, I think that's sufficient in my experience.
Okay. I agree. There was no, I don't see any formal modification to the application to change the relief that was requested.
I did specifically request that because it's not the driveway being within 10 feet. It's the requirement that the 10-foot buffer strip be vegetated with the exception of an inlet or out entrance or exit, which I believe is a driveway.
But I mean, can you build a driveway that's vegetated? Right. So isn't that the same thing by building a driveway? Isn't it implicit at that point that you're not going to have that vegetated buffer?
Yeah, because the driveway's exempt. It's an entrance or exit. So you can't. It's impossible to build a house in Grafton without going through a 10-foot strip with a driveway.
Right. So what? All right, then if you're not going to have a driveway in the 10-foot strip, then why don't you vegetate it? Why do you even need the variance?
That's been my point from day one, is because I don't think I even need a variance, because the only exempt activity is the driveway. The only part that's unvegetated within the strip is the driveway. It's impossible to build a house on any lot without going from the road 10 feet in with a driveway.
Yeah, and I think that what the building inspector has said is that because you're following the property line with your driveway, that's where you need the relief. So the cut is exempted, but what you're doing is way more than the cut. You're doing it'd be as if in a traditional square lot in a subdivision, as if you had your cut and immediately the driveway made a 90-degree turn and followed the property line of the street, or you did your cut right at your side lot line and your driveway followed your side lot line all the way in. That's effectively what you're doing, and that's why you need the relief. So the only
It's
thing
not what
that's
the
exempt is the
regulations say.
cut. Well, that's up to the guy with the zoning enforcement officer title to decide, not you or I.
I'll just say that is what the regulation does say, and I'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
Yep.
So, but, Mr. Yeomans, the public hearing has been closed. We voted on this. I think it's time to move on.
Yeah, Brian, you just need to do a motion and here and case number, whatever.
So moved. I make a motion that we end case number 880 for granting the variance as stated.
All right, motion made and seconded. Ms. DeRosiers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. So I apologize to the applicants, Mr. Gallant and Mr. Nicholson. There you are. For the length of time. I wasn't expecting it to go that far this evening. So we'll just go in order. That would be 33 North Street we'll start with. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm going to read the rules of order. These will apply to both case 882 and 883. So the way we'll proceed is that the clerk will read the petition, and then the petitioner will have the opportunity to present their case. The petitioner will have 15 minutes to present. The petitioner shall present the required information, and all comments should be specific. The opposition will also have 15 minutes to speak. These time limits will be extended only with the consent of the board. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to the petition will then have an opportunity to do so. Letters received in favor of or in opposition to the petition will be read into the meeting record. If you wish to speak, state your name and address for the record. The board may ask questions from time to time. However, all conversation should be directed through the chair. After all evidence is presented, the board will enter into discussion and render a decision. At any time during this hearing and prior to a decision being made by the board, the petitioner has the option to request that the petition be withdrawn without prejudice or continued until a later date, at which time the petitioner could provide additional information favorable to the petitioner. So starting with case 882, Ms. Reed, could you please read the petition?
Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from William Nicholson for 33 North Street, Grafton, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a variance to allow the construction of a small barn, 24 feet by 36 feet, with only a 10-foot setback where a 15-foot setback is required on both sides. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, March 24th at 7 p.m. via Zoom conference to consider this request and or take whatever action is necessary, including granting of a finding, special permit, variance, or other necessary relief allowed under the zoning bylaw. Zoning Board of Appeals, Brian Waller, Chairman, Marianne DeRosiers, Vice Chairman, Kay Reed, Clerk, William Yeomans, William McCusker, Peter Adams, alternate, Matali Biswas, alternate. Case number 882. The Grafton News, Thursday, March 10th, 2022.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for case number 882.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Rogers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
Motion made and seconded. We'll now open the public hearing on case 882. I'll turn the floor over to the petitioner for 15 minutes. The petitioner will present his case. And then we'll open up and see if there's comments from the public. So Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. And thank you all for sharing some of your time on Thursday evening. So as the petition states, I guess I should mention that I live on the corner of North and Warren. So it's a corner lot. And I purchased the land. I think you have a plot plan. I hope you do. I gave Katrina a few. Yeah, there we go. So there's sort of a panhandle there up in the yes, exactly. I purchased that from the McGinnises, who used to live where the lanes now do, directly north of my property. And Mrs. McGinnis was a Warren, and they were one of the early families in Grafton. They just moved out of town a few years ago to retire on the Cape, but they lived in town for 150, 200 years, something like that. And that's where Warren Street is, of course, named for them. And so I purchased that property from them just before they moved to the Cape with the intent of putting this barn there. And Mrs. McGinnis, Abby Warren originally, before she was married, her father had a garage on this exact piece of property. It was a garage that housed 2 school buses, so it was a pretty good sized garage. And I have seen a photograph of it. It was torn down in the 60s sometimes, and I just can't seem to put my hands on it. I'm not sure what happened to it, but there was a structure there, and there is still the concrete slab that the building was built on. It's a little bit bigger than what I proposed. It was 40 feet long and 26 feet wide. And this is, I don't know if you can see with my camera here, but this is that concrete slab right there. So I'm hoping if you'll permit me to build a building there. And I would, in my intent, so I need, as the petition said, the relief from the 15-foot setback requirement. I think I'm good behind the building. I think I've got enough room there. And in front, I'm not 100% certain if I have enough room. I realize it requires a 30-foot setback. Some of that rectangle has 130 feet back from the street, but then there is kind of an angle there. And so I'm not clear if I need to have 30 feet setback from the entire property line, I guess, but you can advise me on that. Currently, and this should only take on a minute or two, my mother lives across the street, and she has a nice big 3-car garage, so I use that for my pickup truck and my sports car and so forth. But she's 93, and when the inevitable happens, we'll have to sell her property, and so that will be gone, and I'll be retiring in a couple of years. So I'm thinking about, gee, what am I going to do when I'm retired? I can't play tennis anymore because of arthritis. I like to cycle, but I can't do much of that because of my back is pretty loaded with arthritis as well. I'm on the fire department. I've been on the Grafton Fire Department for 42 years, but I have to retire when I turn 65. That's in 3 months. So what am I going to do? And my other big interest is cars. And so I'd like to have a barn or large garage of this size to put a few cars in and tinker with those. And so that's why I'm here this evening, and hoping that you'll grant me this variance. And I think that's all I have.
Oscar?
Yeah, I can't see who's on. Is Mr. Berger still on?
Yes.
So through you, Mr. wish I could do that. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the zoning enforcement officer, I have two questions. One, for accessory buildings, I thought we could reduce the setback of one side of the building to something less than 15 feet. I wonder if you can just comment on that a little bit. And then the second question is, and the applicant actually brought this up as respect to the front yard setback, does he have a more significant requirement for a front yard setback in a situation like this? And I'm not even sure where that would be. Would it be the Warren Street side or the North Street side, or I don't know. So can you just elaborate a little bit up on that?
I can. Can I share my screen? Okay. This is the lot, Mr. Chair. This is Warren Street here. Can everybody see my screen first?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. All right. This is Warren Street, and here's North Street. So, do you have a rear yard? That's a good question. This is the front. This is the front. I'm going to have to look at the bylaw. I get confused on this every once in a while. I think you have sides and no rear, but I'll be able to answer that question once I throw up the bylaw. So if we do have a rear, then it's back to 10 feet. I don't think we do have a rear, but while you guys are deliberating and talking, I will find that for you. But he has no problem with front, because here's your front and there's your front, and it's way back here. So he's got probably two sides. But let me get back to you on that in a minute. Are there any questions?
But before you do that, what about the one side can be reduced? Or
No. If I've got to find that bylaw, it's in the definitions, and it's going to tell me when you have a corner lot, I think you have two sides and no rears. So this is a very odd lot. So we've got a front, we've got sides and sides. I don't think we have rear, but I'm going to get back to you on that.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, can I continue?
Please.
Yeah, so, to the applicant, you probably heard a little bit of this in the last hearing, and as the bad guy there, and might as well be the bad guy here, but, you've got a certain size lot. There's a requirement in our bylaw that you have certain setbacks. And at the end of the day, there's really nothing unique about your situation. There's really, nothing unique about the shape, topography, soil conditions, et cetera, that would prevent you from using this lot. And furthermore, we're talking about an accessory structure even. So, it's not like you couldn't even use this for a residence. I mean, you've already got a residence. It's in a residential zone. So even coming up with a hardship is really kind of difficult. At the end of the day, what you're asking for is permission to put a bigger building on that piece of your lot than the bylaw allows. And, I don't think that there's any way that you're going to meet the very strict requirements for variance. And please understand that these requirements for variances come straight out of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, and it's very explicit. And the board has very little leeway in what we can do for granting variances. And lawyers and others who spend a lot of time in this field will tell you that, it's extremely difficult to get a variance. The criteria that needs to be met is extremely high. And, oftentimes many of the ones that get granted would be overturned on appeal anyways, because they still don't meet the requirements. And the reason those requirements are so high is because what you're effectively doing is asking for permission to ignore the bylaw. So the town went around and said, we at town meeting voted to say we want a bylaw that says you have to have 10-foot setbacks or 15-foot setbacks. And the town agreed that and memorialized it and formed the bylaw. And you're essentially asking for permission to ignore that. So the state is allowed for a process for that to happen, but the criteria to do it is extremely high. So I think this is just a simple case of too big a building and the land that you have.
And the fact that there was a structure there before really isn't germane, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, maybe I missed that point. Was it the same size structure that was there, or roughly
It was
speaking,
larger.
and how long has it been gone?
I'm not positive, but I would say early to mid 60s it was torn down.
Oh, well, yeah, it's not germane. If it was within the last, I think, 2 years, we could be talking about it. But yeah, no.
Did you say the concrete pad is still there?
Yeah, the pad is still there, right? The foundation's still there, or the slab, I should say. Yeah.
Oh,
That must constitute something.
yeah.
That there's a foundation there for the building.
Right. Yeah, the foundation is actually 40 feet long by 26 wide, so I'm proposing to build something smaller than that.
Wonder what Mr. Berger thinks about that.
I would have to research that. I mean, I know that in conservation, if there's a foundation, they can build right in the middle of the wetland. But when it comes to zoning, I would definitely need to talk to council to see if anything is grandfathered on that.
Isn't that similar, Bob, to knocking a building down but leaving the front door standing?
No, well, in our bylaws, we don't have pre-existing non-conforming structures can be reconstructed. And that's always been the problem, that you can't reconstruct it. So I'm going to say just off the bat, once you tore it down, you lost it. Because we don't have the words reconstruct in that. And under our definitions on corner lots, it talks about lots that have more than 4. A corner lot with more than 4 property lines will have 1 or more rear yards along the interior property lines. So you have maybe 2 rear property lines, which I don't know if that's going to help you or not. Katrina, can you pull up the map again?
The map or the survey?
The site plan, the survey.
Okay.
So if you have, what do you have? You have a front on Warren, front on North, where it says 100.21, that's a side. I would think the 84 is a side. The 62 could be a side, and I think the 44 is a rear.
Bob, did you say the bylaw says 1 or more rears?
Yeah. I would have to really, because if we consider 62 a rear, you know what? If we consider 62's rears, then he may have it. All right, I'm going to share, if I can find it. Give me a minute.
He may have it, meaning he doesn't need a variance?
Wait a minute.
Ms. Boss?
Mr. Berger, while you're looking at that, I have 2 questions. I know I'm not voting, but I did have a question. Would section 3.3.2.5 of the bylaw apply, where it says no accessory building shall be located within any required rear yard, except that a building accessory to a 1 or 2 family dwelling may be located up to 10 feet from a lot?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're going for right now.
Okay. And then my next question, it would be the portion of that part of the lot that was purchased, was that purchased from, I think, the Lane family.
It was
Okay.
purchased from the McGinnises who lived where the Lanes live now.
Okay, so was it purchased and then that larger structure was built on it? Or was that larger structure there before you bought? And I don't know if that makes any difference.
Yes, it was there before. It was built by Mrs. McGinnis's father, Horace Warren, probably in the 40s, because he was the fire chief and he also drove school buses in town. And he died. It was torn down sometime in the 60s.
Okay. And who?
And I just purchased it about 7 years ago, I'd say.
And so the McGinnises tore down the building.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I'm gonna share my screen. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is where we are right here. A corner lot with more than 4 property lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has 5. Okay. Have one or more rear yards along the interior property lines between the 2 sidelines. So let's throw this over here. So this is a front and this is a front. This is a side. I've got to say this is a side. And I think these could be considered rears. Does anybody concur with that?
What?
Bill?
Seems like it to me.
All right, so then
Ms.
you know.
Bisbal,
So we're gonna go front, side, which brings it all the way back to here. And then we have 2 more property lines. That would be a rear, that would be a rear. So that means this can be 10 feet and that can be 10 feet, but this one here is still stuck with 15 feet. So 62 up here is still not making it, but if you can shrink it, you might be able to get it.
You shrink the building, you mean?
Well, you gotta maintain that 10 feet. I'm gonna stop my share because I think Katrina, you can put that site plan back up. Yeah, so that's your problem. I don't know, without shrinking the building, because you gotta grab 5 more feet where that mouse is. Because that's a side.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is that rather than have a 24-foot wide building, I could have a 19-foot wide building. Is that correct?
If you can give me 15 feet there, you have your 10 feet on your other 62, and you've got your 15 feet over there. So yeah.
So I just have one question. Where it says 16 feet, could that be a 10-foot? Because that's considered a rear. So it would be a narrower but longer building?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because the 44.60 is a rear and the 62 is a rear.
The bottom 62. Sorry,
Yeah.
the 62.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So
boy, I wish I could get one more foot somehow, make it 20 feet wide. Let's see. So I guess, I mean, you build buildings in even numbers. I guess I could do 18. And it doesn't look like the length is really the problem. It would look kind of odd being 36 feet long. I probably wouldn't be that long, but maybe I'd do 18 by 30 or something like that.
Yeah, right. And all that does not need any relief from this board.
Right.
And for the board to know, I did not review this application.
Okay. Well, thank you. So you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that I can build a structure that's 18 by up to 36 feet without a variance. Is that correct?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can go to 19. You're choosing to go down to 18, but looks like you can go to 19.
Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose I could make it an odd size. Yeah, 19 is better than 18. Yeah, always still lumber. That's all right.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, I expressed my thoughts, and I have a lot of experience here, and so that's why I shared my thoughts and opinions and explained the variance process. But I am just one member. I got to be honest with you. I would love to be able to see you build what you want to build. But this member is very true to the bylaw. There are 4 other members. I mean, if people disagree with me and think that we should grant this variance, I think now would be an appropriate time to speak up before the applicant has to withdraw.
Any further comments? So
Do we have any letters in support or in opposition?
We haven't gotten anything.
okay.
And if we grant the variance, don't we have to have conditions for that variance?
Yeah, it's,
And what would those
Well,
be?
you
So-
mean findings? You'd have to go with
Findings,
findings.
I mean, yeah,
And that's where I got stopped dead.
right.
Yeah. So Mr. Nicholson, I think we could put this to a vote, but I think the alternative is to withdraw your application without prejudice and, see if you can fit it within the bounds described by Mr. Berger. And you can always reapply if, that doesn't pan out.
Well, I appreciate that. What I'm thinking is, well, I would like to mention that I spoke to the abutters, the Lanes, Mr. Bain, who is to the west of me, and the people directly to the west of him, because they're still pretty close. And they all said they had no problem with me building this. I didn't speak to the other folks because they're further away, and if they were concerned, I think they'd be on tonight, and it doesn't sound like they are. So I don't think there's any opposition to it in the neighborhood. And I guess I'm thinking to myself, well, 19 is better than 14, which otherwise is what I could have built, which is a pretty small building. But even 20 would be a little bit better. So maybe I should come back in a month or two and propose a relief of just 1 foot on one, which would give me allow me to build a 20-foot wide building.
So what you're saying makes logical sense. However, you're still going to be up against that same burden to overcome of the, hardship and your lot being unique, or some aspect of the topography of your lot being unique. And I think you have an uphill battle there. So I think, just to say that, I think whether it's a 1 foot variance that you need or 6 feet, I think the standard is the same. Even though I think I think the board is very sympathetic to what you're trying to do, and I think it would be no, I don't see any detriment to the neighborhood of you doing this. It's more there's only so much we can do as a board.
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
Mr. Nicholson, if let's say you would come in and ask you instead for, you know, a 30-foot building, putting it 3 feet off the property line, and you somehow manage to meet the criteria of a unique circumstance owing to the shape, topography, soil conditions that then created a hardship. If you met all that, and you had this building 3 feet off the line, and your neighbor came in and said, hey, that's right where my tomato patch is, and he's going to shade my tomato patch with his barn. Then that gets into the detriment part, and you coming back to us with maybe a smaller building or a building further away from his tomato patch or something like that. That's where that may come in and be relevant. But in this case, what we're talking about is that first set of requirements, you know, that you're not able to meet, and making a building smaller or bigger or changing really isn't going to change that at all. So it's not really going to make a difference if it's 1 foot or 10, quite frankly.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess I'll just thank you for your time, and I'm sorry that I've wasted a half an hour of your time. And I guess I can build a 19 by 30-foot building without a variance. Is that correct?
Actually, can't he build a 19 by 42?
Yeah, it could be longer, right? It could be longer.
It could be longer.
I think it'll just look weird if it's really long, but I'll have to figure out the length of it. But the width, of course, is the big issue.
So, you know, I think we want to have the applicant request to withdraw without prejudice. Is the right way to move here.
Yeah. So, Mr. Nicholson, are you asking to withdraw your application and without prejudice, which means you can come back at any time and reapply?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking to withdraw my application without prejudice.
Okay. And do we need to vote to allow that?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to allow Mr. Nicholson to withdraw his application for case number 882, 33 North Street.
So moved.
Second.
Well, second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes,
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Your application is withdrawn. Yeah, we wish you the best. I hope you're able to get something that fits in there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, all of you.
Can I just say thank you for your service to our town, for protecting us, and congratulations on retirement in 3 months. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Very well said. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Mr. Gallant.
The motion to close this public hearing, Brian.
Oh. This time I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on case 882.
so moved.
Yeah, actually, I think we're ending the hearing, ending case whatever it is.
Oh, that's true.
I think it got closed by way of the withdrawal.
So we still have to
So
vote.
yeah, I moved to end case number 883 or whatever it is, 882.
Second.
All
There's
right,
always
Mr.
a delay
Roser.
with these Zoom meetings. Yes, there's always a delay with these Zoom meetings. So anyway, yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes,
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Case 882 is closed. So Mr. Gallant, I know it's late, and I don't know what your time limitations are or your time frame on what you're looking to build. We'll leave it to you if you want to, proceed, or, we could push this to another night that's earlier, that you don't have to do it after 9 o'clock.
I'm still awake as everybody else. I mean, it's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's just pretty straightforward anyway, hopefully.
All right. So I read the rules of order. Ms. Reed, could you please read the petition for case number 883?
The Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from Jay Gallant for 125 George Hill Road, Grafton, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a special permit to allow the reconstruction and expansion of an existing wraparound porch that was originally built within the front yard setback in 1900. Part of the port reconstruction is included in an addition renovation project for which a building permit is already issued. If the requested relief is granted, the entire porch will be uniform and continuous from the corner of the addition around the entirety of the existing house. The existing porch is 23.9 from the front property line, and the proposed extended porch will be 22.2 from the property line. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, March 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Zoning Board of Appeals, Brian Waller, Chairman, Mayor Andrew Rogers, Vice Chairman, Kay Reed Clerk, William Yeomans, Member, William McCusker, Member, Peter Adams, Alternate, Matali Biswas, Alternate, case number 883.
Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for case number 883.
Second.
Yeah, Brian, you don't need to do that, Brian. You can open it. You start it. You need the motion to close it, though. So you can just say open it.
All right. I have to change my notes then, because that's.
Yeah, no, you don't need a motion. Just open. You as chairman can open the case.
All right. So case 883 is open. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Gallant. You can let us know your position.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So my name's Jay Gallant. I'm the architect for this project. Ron Ernenwine is the owner. I see he's attending the meeting as well. He lives next door, and his daughter is co-owner of the property, and she's going to ultimately live there. And it's could you share some of the items that were submitted? I think if we look through the materials, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So as I stated in the application, it's where it says number 125 existing dwelling, that's a farmhouse that was built around 1900, and the same family lived there for a very long time. It needs a little bit of work. Mr. Ernenwine's purchased the property and wants to completely redo it, put on a very nice addition with a connector to it. That was also an addition to kind of really make it into a true New England farmhouse. The addition is a garage with a master suite above that'll be a barn-like structure visually. I also submitted some elevations and stuff. I don't know if you have those, or if you want me to share my screen.
Why don't you share your screen and then you can show what you want. I'll stop sharing.
Perfect.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start with what you were showing. So the original farmhouse, the existing porch, I'm going to actually show you. So that's what the house kind of looked like. I guess it still looks like that. The siding's been stripped. So as I said in the application, most of the work that we're doing is by right, because the front yard setback is here. The entire addition is within the buildable area of the lot, and it's a big property. I mean, as you can see, the farmhouse is right up tight to the road, and then the rest of the farm was in the back. And so we kind of wanted to get going. Mr. Ernenwine wanted to get going on the construction, and it's a substantial project, and why not? And then we figured we would kind of see how we do with the porch. But if we look at the original, it's a nice wraparound porch. The proposed is, more, as I said, kind of a true farmhouse, barn-like structure with a section connecting the main house to the barn. Makes sense. The porch, we kind of need the porch as part of the connection. And then the existing porch needs some work, needs some reinforcing in the structure and whatnot. So we'd like to just essentially enlarge it slightly as we repair it and we rebuild it. So that's the gist of the application. And back to this, we're essentially asking for 1.7 additional feet of relief. And as you can see, the property line's kind of hurting us. So the shape of the lot, if it's a variance, I don't know if it's a variance or a special permit, I guess we can figure that out, but because it's already non-conforming. But either way, the property line is kind of also making this condition more challenging. So I don't know if there's much else to add. I mean, we're hoping that this is a nice thing for the neighborhood, taking a house that needs a little bit of work and turning it into a really nice property for both the past and the future of the area. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I ventured forth this afternoon and took a few pictures and drove by this. And if Katrina, you could share one of those, I think it'll give a true picture of the present state of it.
I stopped my share.
Okay.
Am I still up?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Well, right. So as I mentioned, we're still we're in the process of starting with the renovation project. I don't know if you noticed that the foundation's already poured for the garage / barn structure as well, and we're kind of, as you can see, it's it needs some work, and we're kind of Mr. Ernewine's proceeded to improve it already. So. That's where we're at. I really don't have much else to add on if there are questions.
Okay, so it's pre-existing non-conforming because it's within the setback already, correct?
Correct.
And what, based on the drawing, it's having a hard time. Where is the porch on the existing structure?
I can explain if we can go back to the plan, please.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing, and Jay, you share yours, okay?
Oh, all right. Yep.
You have everything else right there.
Okay, thank you. I can do that.
Yep.
All right, this right here. So, all right. So the photos that you saw were taken from the road, obviously, and the porch now. Yeah, the site plan is a little confusing. I apologize. So right now, the porch that you saw is the dashed line. See the dashed line there, and as you can see, we're proposing to enlarge it slightly. All right, so I didn't explain it particularly well. So obviously, the house is self-explanatory. The porch is right here. Currently, it ends at this corner. We want to bring it around. There's a door here. We're actually going to use, the side door is the one that you would normally use rather than walking around to the front. So there's going to be a side door right here in this portion, and this is going to be a walkway. So we kind of needed this porch, and want to just bring it around and make it uniform. That's the idea. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Mr. McCusker.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, to our zoning enforcement officer. What do they need? Is it a special permit? Is it a variance? Is it both? Is it neither?
Well, right off the bat, it's a special permit. And then back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it was overturned by the courts, that if you're increasing the nonconformity, then you also still need that variance. And I don't know if they overturned that or not, but that was the last that came out on our zoning bulletins. Anybody remember that conversation back in 2014?
I don't remember what I had for dinner last night.
Okay.
But I think you're correct. As I was looking at this, it seemed to me that the current structure is 23.9 off the front lot line, and the new one's going to be 22.2. So they're going a foot and 7 inches closer to the front lot line. And, unfortunately, that sure seems like it needs a variance, is my recollection.
Now, if they stayed the same, then they would just need a special permit.
Yeah, they could keep that structure. And now the fact that, so this is a porch, not just a roof, right? This is a porch to the applicant?
It's a porch.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's not going to be enclosed, but it's going to be an open porch, but it's a roof with columns to hold it up. That matters.
It does matter because I know where Bill's going. You can go 3 feet into the setback, but not for, decks. You can go for stairs. You can go for your eaves. You can go for your roof overhang. But once you get into your deck, then all that doesn't apply.
Could you, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Yeomans.
to the architect, is there any way you could cantilever the roof? You're seeking to enlarge the porch, what is it, by 1.7 inches or something?
Just under 2 feet. I mean,
Yeah,
could
you
we technically, yes, but I don't know that. So I need to go to a more detailed floor plan, which I have. I just have to open it. So bear with me for a second, if you don't mind. And for what it's worth, I don't know that it matters because it's whatever you guys interpret. I've seen this interpreted different ways in different towns. I've seen conditions like this be a pretty clear-cut special permit because we're there's language where you're doing something with an existing non-conforming structure, but I can see what you're saying too. So whatever you think makes the most sense. But I can I just need to find a more detailed floor plan because there is kind of a depth of a porch that makes it usable versus not, for different things. And the existing porch is pretty narrow. So this is where I guess we're getting into, 9:34 p.m. My brain's not quite working the way it was a few hours ago. All right, so let's see. a full set of drawings, which I guess is this. So let's see. This is for, oh wait, no, this isn't the right one. Because this is without the, that's the elevation page, which shows what? All right, well, that shows the relationship of existing versus proposed if you know. So we're trying to carry this around the entire building at a height that's appropriate, and it just kind of makes it a little bit bigger. And I want to find a floor plan too that shows without getting into a technical drawing.
So you could do it, it wouldn't be symmetrical, right?
Well, exactly. We'd lose some of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, I guess that's, here it is. All right, so yeah, so right now the porch is 4'8". I don't know how many of you have porches like this. 4'8" is very narrow. 6 feet is much better for a lot of things. So we're proposing to essentially take a 5'8" net, 6 feet clear porch and wrap it around the building, going a little bit wider to 8 feet because of the way the barn structure that we're building works in relationship with the existing building. So we're just trying to make a porch that works essentially all the way around the building. I don't know how else to say it. It's kind of, we really kind of need the width, I would think.
The measurements, if you go back to that plot plan, I assume on that front corner where the problem is, the 22'2" and the 23'9". I assume those are to the structure, the floor structure, and not the roof overhang, which I noticed extends beyond the floor.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. So these dimensions are, we put a bunch of dimensions on here just for full appreciation of it, I guess. So the 28.8 feet is to the corner of the existing foundation. The 23.9 feet is to the corner of the existing porch deck structure itself. And then the 22.2 feet is to the corner of the proposed deck structure itself. Right.
All right. So, you probably heard some of this if you're listening to the last ones, but, well, let's take a step back. First of all, you plan here to extend, modify a pre-existing non-conforming structure. For that, you need a special permit. It's pretty clear. Criteria to grant that special permit is relatively low. You just need to be consistent with the neighborhood, not a detriment to the neighborhood, that sort of thing. But as soon as you make the non-conforming piece more non-conforming, then you require a variance. So right now, the house is 23 feet 9 inches off the front lot line. The bylaw says you have to be 30 feet off the front lot line, but that's okay. It's pre-existing non-conforming structure. But what you talk about doing is now making it so the house will be 22 feet 2 inches off the lot line, so 1'7" closer. That increase in the non-conformity is what requires the variance.
Okay. So if
that's where we get in problem. That's where the problem.
Right. No, I understand. So if I could just briefly go to the hardship question, or my point on the hardship is the shape of the lot, where the existing house isn't parallel to the street, and that is hurting us here because we're going towards that point where the street is getting closer to the house. And I'd argue that if it was like every other building and it was parallel to the street, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We'd be keeping a roughly the same relationship.
Yeah, and what you just described was the soil, the shape topography, soil conditions piece of it. But the follow-on is that results in a hardship. Well, so you just identified something with the shape of the lot, but what's the hardship? I mean, that you can't have as wide a porch as you'd like. I mean, it's really not a hardship, unfortunately. If it meant you couldn't build the house, that's a hardship. You can't develop the lot, that sort of thing. But just
yes, but we're conforming here with the width that we want, and we're not conforming here with the width that we want because of the shape of the lot. That's my argument. Yeah,
but it doesn't. There's no hardship, right? The house is still going to be existing whether you have, a 4-foot porch or a 3-foot porch. There's no hardship. It's not like this. The only hardship is you can't do what you want. That by itself doesn't constitute a hardship, unfortunately. That's my thoughts on it. I leave it to the board. There's 4 other members of this board.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Yeomans?
The measurements that are shown on the plan, is the lot line right on the edge of the road? This road is going to be completely rebuilt in a short. I mean, they're going to be doing the engineering on it, and
I believe if I could answer your question, I believe, and Mr. Ernewine, you could, Ron, if you wanted. If I'm saying this incorrectly, please correct me. But I think that this line right here represents the edge of pavement, and this is the property line here. There's a stone wall, kind of it's a scenic road too. So there's a nice stone wall that goes the full length of it, pretty much. And I believe that's here. There's the utility pole. So there's a decent distance between the pavement and the property line, I believe. I don't know exactly what that is, but it looks pretty substantial.
If we were designing a lot today on that, the lot would be measured to the roadway. And I'm wondering if that's a unique situation that would allow us to to grant this variance.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Berger.
That is the property line, the dark line, and that is the correct way to measure structure to the property line.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You'll have to forgive me because I'm a little rusty on just zoning and permitting in general, but could there be an argument that instead of a variance, it's a section 6 special permit finding that we need? And would a section 6 permit apply in Grafton?
Mr.
You're going to have to educate me on.
Under our bylaws 3435, you have a pre-existing non-conforming structure. This is a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and it is allowed to expand, alter, and change. Doesn't say reconstruct. We had that conversation on the other case. A special permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we could, or you, not me, you could grant them a special permit to extend, alter that porch. But the problem now is back in 2014, the court said you can expand it, but if you increase the nonconformity, you need that special permit along with the variance. And that's what we're stuck on right now.
Is it increasing? Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's increasing it because it's going closer to the, it's encroaching more on the front setback.
Right, but I thought it was for a use that's for the same purpose in a substantially different manner. And so maybe I'm just mistaken. Okay, never mind.
Well,
Well,
hold on though, because if you read that section of the bylaw, it says pre-existing non-conforming structures or uses may be extended, altered, or changed only by special permit, provided that no such change shall be permitted unless the zoning board of appeals finds that such extension, alteration, or change will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use to the neighborhood. I mean, according to that, the only requirement is that we find that it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
And in 2014, Mr. Chair, the courts made a ruling that if you are increasing the nonconformity, you also need to grant that variance. Now, you know, you could ask counsel to drop an opinion on that because I'm just the zoning enforcement officer. I'm not the expert, but this is what has come down in the past 8 years. So our bylaws are our bylaws that were put in 1986, but the courts have expanded on them.
And so it's because it's an increase in the nonconformity that even though it's an extension of a pre-existing nonconformity, it needs to be a variance and not a special permit.
No, it needs to be both.
It needs to be both.
It
Okay.
needs to be both, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
McCusker?
Yeah, so just to the points that Ms. Biswas was asking, our own town council oftentimes refers to what we're talking, part of what we're talking about now is the Section 6 finding. And my understanding is essentially our bylaw is an implementation of Chapter 48, Section 6 finding. So, so we never do Section 6 findings per se. We grant a special permit per 3435, or whichever one it is. But even our own town council will oftentimes refer to it exactly as you did as a Section 6 finding. And I agree with Bob. I do recall this, coming down and becoming the situation. But, I desperately would like to, have something be able. I'd like to see the applicant be able to do this. I'm very sympathetic and want to see this happen. But as you all know, I'm also extremely cautious about our bylaw and granting variances, and I've had them come back to bite us when we don't follow the right findings. So I think a two-pronged attack here might be worthwhile. One, well, first and foremost, for the applicant to ask for continuance. Maybe the applicant goes back and looks at, is there any way that he can do something so that he's not getting closer than 23 feet 9 inches. But likewise, maybe just go back and ask counsel for that opinion, make sure that we're doing the right thing here. Make sure that we really are, make sure that a variance really is necessary.
That makes sense to me because, in all honesty, and Bill, you knew this or were aware of it, but I wouldn't have known of that case law that, trumps our bylaw. So.
And like I said, I don't know if it matters, but in other towns, I've seen it interpreted more as a Section 6 finding as you're describing, where it is just a special permit, but I understand where it could certainly potentially be more than that too.
And to the applicant, you understand the specific problem, right? It's that.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I understand it exactly.
I can add to that just a a bit. I've had my hand up. I don't know if you guys can see it because I'm not on the the picture here. I just wanted to speak.
Can you
for
just
a
say your
second.
name and?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron Underline, 111 George Hill Road. I think George Hill Road is one of the scenic roads, byways in town that is, so important to, the aesthetics and the type of zoning that we have being in a rural zone. Folks drive down our street just to suck in the views. And with this project, we, no holds barred, put every effort into making this look like it belonged here. And every detail was put into making it the quintessential 1900s New England farmhouse. And rather than, just an addition that had a master suite, we came up with this idea to have the barn look right down to the cupola on the top, to make it look like it belonged. And, with that in mind, the point here was to not only go along with the neighborhood, but to improve upon that and, make it, more and better than it was. And in my opinion, hardship that exists is, without that wraparound porch, it's going to be ugly. I mean, it's just not going to look right. And it doesn't complete that view of the quintessential farmhouse, because everyone in New England has the wraparound porch. So that was, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think, and not everyone from the board has spoken up, but for myself, I would love to see you build this. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. McCosker.
Yeah. So, I agree entirely. I really want to see what's requested here built. But, the reason I am true to the law here, to the way variance is supposed to be granted, was really shown to us, I think, very recently right here in town, where the planning board had a judge basically throw a case back to them. The planning board said, no, we're not going to allow a over 500-foot cul-de-sac. And they didn't necessarily say why. And the judge turned around and said, well, you granted one here, you granted one there, you granted one in these other places. So you just acted arbitrarily on Church Street and denied the request. So I'm throwing it back to you. I'm remanding it back to you. And that's exactly what can happen to this board as well if we are not following the law the way it's written. The law isn't saying you can't do this, but it is saying you need to meet a set of requirements. And quite frankly, I don't think there's any way you would meet those requirements. I'm certainly willing to listen, if there are some. But so that's why we have to do it right. It looks like the right thing to do here, but the minute we grant it here, and then something comes along where it isn't the right thing to do, we risk having it basically thrown back at us that, you guys can't act arbitrarily like this. You have to be consistent, and we're not. So, I'd like to make sure that we're doing the right thing with respect to the law, get that opinion from counsel. I'd really like the applicant to go back and take a look and see if there's something that can be done that makes some amount of sense, to address it. And then, let's reconvene at our next meeting in some number of weeks and see if we can't come up with a way to get this to work moving forward. That's my suggestion.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Mr. Berger a question?
Sure.
Mr. Berger, you had mentioned the overhangs can be 3 feet beyond. Could you further explain that, please? I think I got confused there. You're muted.
Bob, you're muted.
I had to find the button. It's in the bylaw, I think under 3333, where it talks about your steps can encroach your setback by 3 feet. Eaves can encroach by 3 feet, but not open decks.
So we're at 22.2 feet. We're actually encroaching more than 3 feet. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
you are.
Okay. But the thought that came to my mind is if we kept the eaves and did, a concrete slab, that wouldn't be a deck. And then we could have the eave encroach without, would that evade the process? I guess that would be my question.
I don't think I can answer that on the fly.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Boy, and I don't want to speak for Bob here at all, but I think you're on to something, and it seems like the type of thing that maybe you actually didn't mean to put down on paper in some fashion, and then work with Bob maybe offline on it. But that's the sort of thing that may actually work here.
Yeah, and my problem is I'm trying to read the law as this meeting's going on. So
Yeah. So
Yeah, and it's all verbal. I mean, you really should have something in writing and something that you can look at and
Right.
react to.
all right. So at this point, would you like to just continue this hearing?
I think so. Ron, are you okay with that?
Yeah, let's continue it and get the rest of the details.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, we should have asked way in the beginning for the landowner to confirm that he's all right with the architect speaking on his behalf. If you could just confirm that, and so Katrina can have that in the minutes, I think that would be good.
Yes, we're okay with that. Thank you.
One of these days, I'll catch all that stuff.
20 years from now, buddy, 20 years.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Yeomans.
If the homeowner wanted to make that porch handicapped accessible in any way, would that be a reason? I mean, a handicapped accessibility, I think a porch has to be 5 feet. Is that correct, Mr. Berger?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Right? You might be onto something, Bill. That that could be a hardship. We've done that where the hardship is creating something to deal with, senior citizen parents and that sort of thing. Larger bathrooms. We've done that before where
You don't, Mr. Chair, you don't need, if you were putting a handicap ramp up, that does not need to comply with our zoning setbacks.
So hopefully the
Grant the
architect
permit?
is.
I heard something in the original presentation that this gentleman was building this for his daughter. So he may want to accommodate his later years.
So definitely taking in the discussion. Thank you.
All right. So we'll continue this hearing. We don't have another meeting scheduled at this point. Katrina, are there any other cases?
Well, we're gonna have to hear High Point as soon as I get the abutters list, because they want to come before us for determination of completeness.
Well,
So
it would be 2 weeks. It would have to be at least 2 weeks after you get the list because we got to advertise it twice.
Right, so Tammy's got the list because it's a subdivision, it's a more detailed list because it's the entire subdivision plus 300 feet around the subdivision. And right now Tammy is the only person in the assessor's office. So she's trying to get it done for me. She might work on it this weekend. So I'm hoping I have it sometime next week. So if I get the abutters list next week, the earliest, and I would get the legal notice to the Grafton News by the 30th. This is pushing it by the 31st. Publish it for the 7th and the 14th. The earliest we could have a meeting is the 21st.
So that would be the earliest. So I think the following.
Yeah, that's the extreme earliest because I have to have 2 weeks to publish the legal notice. I don't have the list yet this week, so I have to get the legal notice to the Grafton News no later than Friday, April 1st. For the 2 weeks to publish, it would be the 7th and the 14th. So the 21st could be the earliest we could have a meeting.
All right. So do we want to say tentatively April 28th for now?
Well, we have to pick a date because we have to tell him when he's coming back. So you have to pick a date certain. You can't say tentatively. Now, if something happens and we have to push him, we probably could. But if we say the 28th, then that gives me a week leeway for High Point.
So do you think
I should have it. Tammy said she'll get it to me early next week. If
Okay.
I don't, if it's just, she got promoted to the town assessor, the assistant assessor left, and they're trying to hire 2 positions. So she's been the only one in there for 3 weeks.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so let's plan for the 28th.
So he needs to ask for a continuance and then someone needs to make a motion.
I'd like to request a continuance
To the April 28th meeting.
to the April
Mr. Chair.
28th meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Berger?
I want to share my screen one more time before you vote on this.
Okay, Jay, stop sharing your screen if you
Oh,
can.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No, we've been looking at
10:01.
it. It's fine.
10:01 PM. All right, sorry.
That's okay. Trust me, I know.
I don't think I lost my place. So that was 2014 that we were discussing. Now we're into 2019. We still may want to get your opinion from Ginny. Here's the case from 2019, which now I think reversed 2014. So here the statute requires the owner of a single family with a pre-existing non-conforming who's going to do some modifications. He is increasing. And now they're saying the homeowner does not require to obtain a variance in that circumstance. We may still want to get Ginny. This was me just doing real fast research.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get council opinion.
I just wanted everybody to see that this is February 8th, 2019, and this is the case that they're talking about. I don't know if that, enlightened everybody or not. And I'll probably save
Be enlightened with this hour.
Okay. I'm sorry
okay.
for interrupting you.
So we'll entertain a motion to continue case number 883 to the April 28th meeting.
So moved.
At 7 p.m. You want to say?
Oh. To the April 28th meeting at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
I hate to do this, Brian, but before I say yes, do we have anyone that wanted to speak? Did we do that? Did we look for public input?
We have not. But there is, the only one here is Nancy Piccone, and she's probably listening to hear what we say about High Point,
Okay.
because her
Is there
hand's not raised.
any
Okay.
one from the public that wants to speak on this case? Hearing nothing. All right. It's Mr. McCusker.
Yes. McCusker, yes.
Case 883 is continued to the April 28th meeting at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
The agenda. All right. So that's it. So we'll skip the minutes tonight. And actually, if anyone wants to send edits to them, you can send them to me and I'll consolidate them and send them to Katrina. And do we need a motion to close the meeting? Or we just close it?
Yeah, yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. This meeting is adjourned.